The sea has given life through trade and travel, but it has also claimed thousands of lives in history's deadliest disasters. The ocean. It covers more than 2/3 of our planet, a vast, shimmering expanse of blue. It is the cradle of life, the source of immense biodiversity, and a vital artery for human civilization. For millennia, we have turned to the sea for sustenance, for exploration, and for connection. It has carried our hopes and dreams across continents, linking distant shores and diverse cultures. The rhythmic pulse of the tides feels like the very heartbeat of Earth, a constant, soothing presence in our world. We see its beauty, we feel its power, and we are drawn to its endless horizons, believing perhaps that we have tamed its wild spirit. Its calm, sun-dappled surface can, in an instant, transform into a maelstrom of unimaginable fury. The gentle waves that lap at the shore can rise into monstrous, building-sized walls of water, driven by the raw power of wind and storm. This is a world that does not bargain, a force of nature that commands respect, and, at times, inspires fear. It reminds us, often with devastating finality, that our grandest creations are but fleeting specks against its timeless and, honestly, untamable might. The very waters that sustain life can also become the stage for our greatest tragedies. When humanity ventures onto these waters, we do so with a fragile trust. We place our faith in steel, in engineering, and in the steady hand of a captain. Yet history is littered with moments when that trust was shattered. These are the stories of ships that sailed with fanfare and promise, only to be swallowed by the deep, leaving behind silence and sorrow. They are tales of human error, of nature's indifference, and of breathtaking bravery in the face of certain doom. She was a titan of the industrial age, a floating palace named with all the confidence of her creators. The RMS Titanic was the largest ship afloat at the time of her maiden voyage. Grand staircases, opulent suites, powerful engines, newspapers and onlookers marveled at her sheer scale and beauty. For those who boarded her in April 1912, she was a promise of a new era. She was, famously, unsinkable. On the night of April 14th, the Atlantic was a sea of glass under a star-strewn, moonless sky. The air was bitingly cold, a stillness that belied the hidden danger lurking in the water. Lookouts perched high above the deck strained their eyes in the darkness. Then it appeared. A colossal iceberg, a mountain of ancient ice, drifted silently into the Titanic's path. Despite desperate maneuvers, the collision was unavoidable. The impact was described by some survivors as a mere shudder, a slight jarring that barely disturbed the revelers in the first-class lounges. But below the waterline, a fatal wound had been inflicted. The unsinkable ship was dying. The tragedy that unfolded was one of stark contrasts and, honestly, terrible ironies. The ship, designed with watertight compartments, was not equipped to handle a gash that stretched over 300 feet. An even greater failure was the shocking lack of lifeboats, enough for only half of the 2,224 souls on board. As the great vessel began its slow, inexorable tilt into the freezing ocean, a terrifying reality set in. There would not be enough room for everyone, panic mixed with stoicism. Chaos with acts of incredible sacrifice the band famously played on, a haunting melody against the sounds of splintering wood and desperate cries for help. In just over 2 hours, the magnificent ship vanished beneath the waves, leaving more than 1,500 people to perish in the icy darkness. In the warm tropical waters of the Philippines, the night of December 20th, 1987 was supposed to be one of routine travel. The passenger ferry MV Doña Paz was sailing from the island of Leyte to Manila, filled with people heading home for Christmas. The vessel was a lifeline for inter-island travel, a common and affordable way for families to connect across the archipelago. The mood on board was likely festive, with the promise of holiday reunions. But the ferry was dangerously, catastrophically overcrowded. Officially registered to carry just over 1,500 people, it is believed that more than 4,000 passengers had crammed onto its decks. As the Doña Paz navigated the Tablas Strait, a notoriously busy shipping lane, it entered a collision course with the oil tanker MT Vector. The Vector was carrying over 8,800 barrels gasoline, other petroleum products. In the dead of night, the two vessels collided with devastating force. The impact ripped open the tanker's cargo, unleashing a torrent of highly flammable liquid onto the sea. The gasoline ignited almost instantly, engulfing both ships in a monstrous fireball. The sea itself became an inferno, a burning, inescapable trap for everyone on board. The scene was apocalyptic. Survivors described a sudden, violent crash followed by an explosion that plunged the ship into darkness, only to be illuminated moments later by towering flames. Panic erupted as fire swept through the overcrowded decks. There were reportedly no life jackets to be found, and no crew members to organize an evacuation. The only escape was to jump into the burning water, a choice between perishing in the fire or in the flaming sea below. It was a scene of unimaginable horror, a nightmare from which very few would emerge. The heat was so intense it was said to have melted the very steel of the ship. The sinking of the MV Doña Paz remains the deadliest peacetime maritime disaster in history. Of the estimated 4,386 people on board, only 24 survived. In the chaotic aftermath of the Chinese Civil War, countless people were desperate to flee the advancing communist forces. On December 3, 1948, the passenger steamship SS Kiangya was preparing to sail from Shanghai down the Huangpu River towards Ningbo. The ship, with an official capacity of 1,186, became a vessel of last resort for thousands of terrified refugees. While the official manifest listed 2,150 passengers, it is widely believed that the true number was far higher, with estimates suggesting nearly 4,000 souls were aboard, a desperate human cargo seeking safety. As the heavily laden ship steamed slowly down the river mouth, a sudden, catastrophic explosion tore through its stern. The blast was immense, ripping a huge hole in the hull and shattering the vessel's structure. Within moments, cold river water began pouring in, and the SS Kiangya started to sink rapidly. Panic and chaos erupted in the darkness. The cause of the explosion has never been definitively determined. The prevailing theory is that the ship struck a naval mine left over from the Second World War. Another possibility suggests an internal explosion, perhaps caused by smuggled munitions, or a catastrophic failure in the ship's boilers, though this is considered less likely. As the American Civil War drew to its bitter close in April 1865, a wave of relief washed over the nation. For thousands of Union soldiers held in Confederate prisons like Cahaba Andersonville, freedom was at hand. These men, emaciated from starvation and disease, were promised a swift journey home. One of the vessels tasked with this mission was the SS Sultana, a wooden sidewheel steamboat designed for the Mississippi River trade. Her legal carrying capacity was just 376 passengers and crew, but greed and corruption would turn this voyage of liberation into a journey of unimaginable horror. Under pressure from the U.S. government, which was paying a handsome fee per soldier transported, the Sultana's captain and officers agreed to take on a dangerously large number of men. When the steamboat departed Vicksburg, Mississippi, it was carrying an estimated 2,137 people, nearly 6 times its legal limit. The men were packed onto every available deck, their combined weight causing the wooden structure to sag precariously. Adding to this perilous situation, the ship's boilers were in a state of disrepair. A leak had been discovered and hastily patched, a temporary fix for a problem that demanded a complete overhaul. In the early morning hours of April 27, 1865, just a few miles north of Memphis, Tennessee, 3 of the Sultana's 4 overworked boilers exploded with cataclysmic force. The blast tore through the heart of the steamboat, sending a geyser of steam fire and shrapnel through the crowded decks where hundreds of soldiers were sleeping. Many were killed instantly. The explosion ignited the ship's wooden superstructure, turning the vessel into a floating inferno. Survivors were faced with a horrific choice: burn to death on the boat or jump into the Mississippi, which was a raging, flood-swollen torrent filled with icy meltwater. The MV Joola was more than just a ferry. It was a symbol of national pride and a vital link for the people of Senegal. German-built, state-owned vessel connected Casamance with Dakar, providing an essential and affordable alternative to traveling through neighboring Gambia. For students, traders, and families, The Joola was a lifeline. It was meant to be a safe and reliable vessel, a promise from the government to its people. However, on its final voyage on September 26, 2002, that promise would be tragically and irrevocably broken. The ferry set sail from Ziguinchor in the afternoon, heading into the Atlantic. It soon became clear that the vessel was dangerously overloaded. Designed to carry a maximum of 580 passengers and crew, it is believed that nearly 2,000 people were on board, more than 3 times its capacity. Many were celebrating the end of the rainy season, with holidaymakers and students returning to Dakar. As the Joola sailed into the night, it encountered a storm off the coast of Gambia. The combination of fierce winds, rough seas, and the ship's top-heavy overcrowded state proved to be a fatal mix. In a matter of minutes, the ferry capsized. The suddenness of the event gave no time for an organized evacuation or the distribution of life vests. The ship turned over completely, trapping hundreds of people inside the hull. Those who had been on the upper decks were thrown into the churning, storm-tossed ocean. The scene was one of absolute chaos and darkness, punctuated by the cries of those struggling to stay afloat. The initial rescue response was shockingly slow. It was not until the following morning that local fishermen discovered the overturned hull and the few survivors clinging to it. The official government rescue was delayed for many hours. Out of the nearly 2,000 people on board, only 64 survived. The loss of life was immense, with an official death toll of 1,863, making it one of the worst maritime disasters of the 21st century. Out of the deepest sorrows often come the most profound changes. The history of maritime safety is not a story of proactive innovation. It is a story written in response to tragedy, a chronicle of lessons learned at an unbearable cost. The sinking of the Titanic sent a shockwave through the world. The horrific loss of life in the calm, icy Atlantic made standards failures painfully clear. The disaster directly spurred the creation of the first SOLAS in 1914. SOLAS established universal rules for ships on international voyages. SOLAS mandated lifeboats for all. It required lifeboat drills. It required inspections. The tragedy also led to the International Ice Patrol. These new laws answered the cries of the 1,500 lost. Similar reforms followed other disasters. The inferno that consumed the MV Doña Paz exposed corruption and enforcement failures. The disaster forced action against overloading. It exposed the use of unseaworthy vessels. New ticketing systems provided accurate passenger manifests. Stricter inspection regimes were put in place. Enforcement, however, remains a challenge. The SS Sultana explosion led to improved boiler safety on steamboats. The capsizing of the MV Joola highlighted fatal consequences of failed government oversight. Vessel design, fire suppression systems, passenger limits, crew training, emergency communications. These regulations form a complex web of safety to prevent repeats. They are the legacy of those who perished, a shield for future seafarers and travelers. In our modern age, we place immense faith in technology. We have ships equipped with sophisticated GPS for pinpoint navigation, advanced radar systems that can see through fog and darkness, and satellite communications that connect a vessel to shore in an instant. Weather forecasting models can predict the path of a storm with remarkable accuracy. Hull designs are tested in complex simulations, and automated systems can manage engines and stabilize a ship in rough seas. It is easy to look at this array of digital tools and believe that the era of great maritime disasters is behind us, that technology alone has made the ocean safe. Yet, technology is only as effective as the human beings who operate it. The most advanced radar is useless if the watchkeeper is not paying attention. The most precise navigation system cannot prevent a collision if a crew is fatigued or poorly trained. The MV Doña Paz, the MT Vector, were sailing in a busy, well-known strait, but a failure of basic seamanship, the simple act of keeping a proper lookout, led to their collision. The MV Joola had known mechanical issues that were ignored, a human decision to set sail despite the risks. The stories of these fallen ships are more than just dramatic tales. They are solemn memorials. Titanic, Doña Paz, Kiangya, Sultana, Joola. They represent thousands of individual lives, each with its own story, hopes, and dreams, all cut short in moments of terror and tragedy. Parents, children, soldiers returning from war, families seeking a better life. To remember these disasters is to honor the memory of every person who was lost to the unforgiving waters, to ensure that their final moments were not in vain. This act of remembrance is our most sacred duty to them, and it is also a profound responsibility to ourselves and to future generations. By studying these events, chain of errors, the overlooked warnings, the human failings that led to catastrophe, we arm ourselves with the most powerful tool of all, knowledge. Seafarers of today learn from the mistakes of the past. Naval architects design safer ships analyzing structural failures of wrecks on the ocean floor. Regulators create stronger laws by identifying the loopholes that allowed these tragedies to occur. Each lesson learned is a life saved in the future. There is a message of hope to be found in these dark chapters of our maritime history. It is the hope that we, as a species, are capable of learning from our most painful failures. The sea will always be a place of immense power and inherent risk, but we can navigate it with greater wisdom, with deeper respect, and with an unwavering commitment to the preservation of life. The ghosts of these great wrecks sail with us, silent reminders of the price of arrogance, greed, and negligence. Their stories are a compass that guides us toward a safer horizon. We must speak the names of the ships and the people who sailed on them, for in doing so, we keep their memory alive, and we reinforce the solemn vow that underpins all maritime safety, that every soul who sets out on a voyage deserves to return home safely.